The millionaire's laugh echoed across the marble floor. Loud, sharp, humiliating. Tessa froze, her small hands gripping her faded wallet. She hadn't asked for a loan. She hadn't begged. She hadn't caused trouble. All she said was, "I just want to see my balance." But Mr. Hawthorne, the man who owned half the city's skyline, leaned over her shoulder, smirking like her request was a joke. The bankers laughed with him, because that's what people do when power tells them to. Tessa's cheeks burned. Her voice cracked. "Sir, please." He rolled his eyes and tapped the screen mockingly. Then the numbers loaded, and his smile died. "Stay with me." Because what appeared on that screen flipped the entire room upside down. Tessa Parker was used to being overlooked. At 16, she carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who had seen too much, learned too early, and fought too long to ever let the world break her spirit. She wore thrift store jeans, carried a second-hand backpack, and walked into places people said kids like her didn't belong. But today wasn't about proving anything. She just needed to check the balance of an account her late grandmother left her. An account she'd never touched because every dollar was sacred. Inside Hawthorne Bank, the air smelled of cologne, wealth, and something colder, judgment. Mr. Leonard Hawthorne, the billionaire CEO, stood near the counter giving orders like a king directing his empire. Sharp suit, silver watch, a smile that never reached his eyes. Behind him stood his assistant, Claire, a woman who watched everything with an unsettling, rehearsed politeness. When Tessa approached the teller and handed over her ID, whispers rippled behind her. A security guard eyed her like she'd stepped into a forbidden zone. A woman in pearls clutched her purse tighter. "Can I see my balance, please?" Tessa asked softly. The teller exchanged a look with Claire, a look that said, "Why is she here?" Before she knew it, they called Hawthorne over. He strutted forward, eyes scanning Tessa like she didn't belong in his bank or his world. "This account?" he said loudly. "This one is yours?" People turned. Phones lifted. Judgment sharpened. Tessa nodded. Hawthorne chuckled. A cruel, dismissive sound. "Tessa, sweetheart, this account hasn't seen movement in years. What are you expecting to find, a fortune?" She didn't answer. She wasn't here for him, but he stepped closer anyway, invading her space, fueled by entitlement. "Fine," he said mockingly. "Let's entertain this." He tapped the screen himself. Everyone leaned in, because they expected a number that confirmed their beliefs. But what appeared wasn't small, wasn't forgotten, wasn't ordinary. It was a number that made even Hawthorne go still. The moment the numbers appeared, Hawthorne's laughter died in his throat. The billionaire, a man who had stared down boardrooms, senators, and sharks, froze. His fingers hovered over the screen like they'd touched fire. His eyes widened, not with curiosity, but with disbelief. The teller gasped. Claire stepped back. The security guard's hand slipped off his belt, because on that glowing bank monitor, in bold black digits, sat a balance no one expected. 42,870,000 through 42,870,000 and 13 cents. Tessa blinked, confused. Is that right?" Hawthorne didn't answer. His throat tightened. His jaw clenched. His posture shifted from arrogance to panic. This wasn't possible. Not for her. Not for someone he assumed was powerless. But the system didn't lie. This can't be correct," he stammered, smashing the refresh button again and again. The number refused to change. Customers leaned in. Phones started recording. Someone whispered, "She's richer than him." The irony struck the room like a thunderclap. Hawthorne's face hardened. His pride couldn't accept this. Not publicly, not in his own bank. He straightened, forcing confidence back into his voice. "There must be a mistake," he announced loudly. "This child clearly doesn't understand what she's looking at." Tessa frowned. "Sir, I only asked to see my balance." Claire hurried to Hawthorne, whispering urgently, but Tessa heard enough. "Sir, the account is in her legal name, and the inheritance codes match. This isn't a glitch." Hawthorne's eyes twitched. Inheritance. Legal. Codes. His empire was built on financial knowledge. And if Claire was right, That meant Tessa Parker, the unnoticed black girl standing in plain clothes, owned an account larger than most CEOs would ever touch. Hawthorne changed tactics fast. He leaned down, forcing a smile that looked like it was carved from pain. "Tessa, sweetheart, let's talk privately," he said, voice dripping with false warmth. "You may not realize what this kind of money means." She stepped back. "I don't need a private room. I just wanted to check my balance." A few customers nodded, murmuring support. Hawthorne realized the room wasn't on his side. He wasn't used to that. So he raised his voice. "Security! Escort her." "She's done nothing wrong," an older black woman interrupted sharply. "She has a right to check her account." Others agreed. Hawthorne swallowed hard. His authority slipped through his fingers. Tessa quietly examined the screen again. $42 million. Her grandmother. Her sweet, kind grandmother who'd worked 2 jobs and still smelled like lavender at bedtime. She'd never said a word about money. Never hinted at this. Why would she save so much for a girl she feared the world would overlook? A truth settled in Tessa's chest. Her grandmother believed in her future long before the world ever did. But Hawthorne wasn't done. He leaned forward, whispering through clenched teeth, "You need guidance. That money, it requires management. I can help you access it, protect it. Sign a temporary authorization and—" "No," Tessa said, steady and clear. He recoiled. "No?" No one told Hawthorne no. "You're 16, he snapped softly. "You don't understand the responsibility." "I understand I don't want you handling my money." Gasps spread. Claire's eyes widened. Security froze mid-step. This teenager was rejecting the man who controlled half the city's real estate. Hawthorne felt control slipping, and that terrified him. He straightened, face turning cold. "Fine," he said loudly. "But we'll need to verify your identity, fully." He signaled the teller, who reluctantly obeyed. Suddenly, forms printed. Scanners beeped. Cameras zoomed in. It wasn't verification. It was intimidation. Tessa noticed. So did every witness. Hawthorne was trying to prove a point. She didn't belong in a world of wealth. Not in his bank. Not in his presence. Tessa swallowed, nerves tightening. But she didn't step back. Because something in her posture said, "I've been underestimated my whole life. This isn't new." But then, Claire's computer chimed. A notification. A red flag. A blinking alert. She looked up slowly, eyes frozen. "Sir." Her voice trembled. "This account? It's not just an inheritance." "What do you mean?" Hawthorne whispered sharply. Claire swallowed. "It's tied to 3 corporate trusts. Some under your name." The entire room fell silent. Hawthorne's blood turned cold. Because suddenly, this wasn't a girl with a big account. This was a girl who accidentally held the key to money, to influence, to secrets, to power, and some of it belonged to him. He whispered, breathless, "Oh God, what did your grandmother do?" Tessa's heart pounded, and Hawthorne's eyes filled with something she never expected, fear. The banker's office fell into a silence so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. No one moved. No one breathed. No one blinked. Except her. The black girl, barely 20, tiny frame, thrift store backpack, oversized hoodie, stood there with calm, patient eyes, as if she had been through storms far worse than this moment. The millionaire, Charles Whitford, leaned back in his leather chair and laughed again. But this time, the laughter trembled. Because deep down, he knew something wasn't right. "Come on," he said, trying to stabilize his voice. "There's no way this is real. Not a chance." But the banker didn't laugh. The assistant didn't laugh. The manager standing at the door didn't laugh. They all stared at the computer screen, like they were looking directly at the sun and couldn't turn away. The millionaire pointed a finger at the girl. "You're telling me a girl who walked into this bank wearing $5 shoes, somehow, has more money than most CEOs?" The girl tilted her head slightly. "I didn't say how much I have," she replied softly. "I just said I wanted to see it." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a woman who had survived things no one in that room could imagine. The banker cleared his throat, hands shaking as he adjusted his glasses. "Sir, the balance is..." Correct. Charles leaned forward. What number are you looking at? The banker hesitated. Then his lips trembled as he whispered, $184 million. And 16 cents. The air left Charles's lungs like someone had punched him straight in the chest. What did you say? He grabbed the monitor and pulled it closer. No, this is wrong. This has to be wrong. But it wasn't. Every digit sat there, clean and unapologetic, glowing like a revelation. 184,016. The girl didn't flinch. She had seen that number before. She had lived with it, slept with it, carried it like a quiet secret. Charles looked at her, eyes wide with disbelief, anger, and something he'd never admit, fear. Who are you? He whispered. The girl placed her backpack gently on the floor and stepped closer to the desk. It doesn't matter who I am, she said. What matters is what you assumed. The manager behind her shifted uncomfortably. You accused her of fraud, he said quietly. You mocked her, in front of everyone. But the girl raised a hand to stop him. It's okay, she said. I'm used to people assuming things. She turned her gaze toward Charles. You saw a black girl in old clothes and thought you knew my story. Charles swallowed hard, still staring at the impossible number on the screen. But how? How is this possible? Did you win something? Inherit something? What? The girl took a slow breath. My parents died when I was 7, she said. They left me nothing but a promise that one day I'd build a life they would have been proud of. She looked down for a moment, her voice tightening. I grew up in shelters, group homes, sleeping in my aunt's car. I worked 3 jobs at 16. I learned to code from a library computer that shut down every 20 minutes. Her eyes lifted. And at 19, I sold an app. Not a big one. Not flashy. Just something people needed. Charles blinked. You built a tech company? She shrugged lightly. I built a solution. The company came after. The banker stared at her as if she were a living miracle. But why come dressed like this? Charles asked, confused. Her answer hit the room like a hammer. Because I wanted to see how I'd be treated. Before you saw the money. Charles's face drained of color. And now you know. The girl picked up her backpack and zipped it quietly. That's my balance, she said. Thank you for showing it. She turned to leave, but just as she reached the door, she paused. Without looking back, she said, You laughed at me before seeing the screen, and that tells me everything about you. Charles' mouth opened, but no sound came out. Money doesn't change people, she said. It reveals them. And with that, she walked out of the room, calm, steady, unbothered. The millionaire stayed frozen, staring at the glowing number on the screen. 184,016. A number that changed everything, except her. She walked out exactly as she had walked in. Quiet, strong, and completely in control. When the black girl stepped out of the banker's office, the entire lobby fell silent. People who had watched her get dismissed, mocked, and doubted, now stared with a mix of shock, embarrassment, and awe. But she didn't meet their eyes. She didn't need validation from strangers who only respected what they saw on a screen. She walked with calmness, slow steps, measured breaths, like someone who had already made peace with the world long before the world knew her name. Behind her, the office door remained slightly open. Inside, Charles. Whitford, the millionaire who once laughed in her face, sat slumped in his chair, staring at the computer monitor like it held the final chapter of his life. The number kept burning into him. 184,016. The banker swallowed, turned to him, and said softly, Sir, are you okay? Charles didn't respond. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money, or business, or deals. He was thinking about himself, and he didn't like what he saw. The girl stepped into the warm afternoon sunlight, her hoodie fluttering gently in the breeze. She reached into her backpack, pulled out a small photograph, and held it between her fingers. It was faded, torn at the edges, a picture of her parents, smiling, young, full of hope the world never allowed them to keep. I'm doing it, she whispered. You'd be proud. She tucked the photo back into the bag and began walking toward the community center across the street. its walls chipped, its roof leaking, its sign nearly falling off. This was where she spent her weekends, teaching kids to code, teaching them to dream bigger than the world wanted them to. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. Several kids ran to her with excitement. "Miss Maya, did you get the results? Did the bank fix your card? Did they help you or not?" Maya smiled, genuine and soft. "They showed me my balance," she said. "Was it a lot?" Maya crouched down to their level. "It was enough," she replied. "But the number isn't what matters." The kids exchanged confused looks. Maya placed a hand on her heart. "What matters is that no one gets to decide your worth based on what you wear, or where you come from, or what they think they know." One of the kids, a shy boy with oversized glasses, whispered, "They treated you bad because you look like us." Maya looked at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "They did." "Did it hurt?" She smiled sadly. "It used to," she said. "But not anymore. Because my value doesn't come from people who can't see it." Charles burst out of the office, breathing heavily. "Where is she? Did she leave? Someone stop her!" But she was already gone. He rushed to the entrance, scanning the street. He spotted her walking toward the community center. He jogged across the sidewalk, stopping a few feet behind her. "Maya!" he called out. She turned calmly, but her eyes were no longer soft. They were guarded now. "Why are you following me?" she asked. Charles was still breathless. I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have judged you. Please, let me make it right." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "You can't make it right," she said softly. "But you can do something better." "What's that?" he asked, desperate. "Learn from it." Charles swallowed, hard. "I want to invest," he blurted. "In you, in whatever you're building. In whatever you want to create." Maya took a single step closer. "You think I need your money?" she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was simply true. "No," Charles said quickly. "I know you don't. I just want to be part of something good." Maya nodded slowly. "Then here's your chance," she said. She pointed to the community center behind her. "The roof leaks. The computers barely work. The kids don't have resources. You want to help? Help them." Charles looked at the building, then at her, then at the children watching from the doorway. Something inside him shifted. "I will," he said quietly. "I promise." Maya studied his face. "For their sake," she said. "I hope you keep that promise." She turned and walked away, the kids rushing around her like she was the hero of a story. They were lucky enough to witness in real life. Charles stood still, watching her disappear into the room filled with broken computers, but unbroken dreams. For the first time in his life, he realized wealth wasn't measured in dollars. Not really. It was measured in impact. And through the glass window, he saw Maya sitting with the kids, laughing, teaching, rebuilding their world one small lesson at a time. That was her balance, not the number the bank showed. This was the true wealth she carried. And this time, no one laughed.